You've probably been told to stop overthinking most of your life. There's this trend right now to solve that. It's this idea that you can kill analysis paralysis by simply turning your brain off, cutting out the overthinking altogether, and acting. Put simply, the ideology is do first, think later. The terms have been picking up traction over the past few weeks, and I get it. I understand it. For most men that get stuck in this analysis paralysis and they're paralyzed, they have these plans and goals in their notebooks, but they never leave the notebook. This idea or this promise of just stop thinking and act makes you feel like comfortable. You have a breath of fresh air in your lungs. Just do. That's the solution, right? But here's what they're not telling you. Undisciplined action is not the opposite of paralysis. It still is paralysis. It's just wearing a different outfit. You see, one man can't move, the other man moves in absolutely every direction and ends up in the same place. Nowhere. Action does not always mean productivity, and thinking does not always mean overthinking. So where's the middle ground? Where's the line that we draw? Let's figure that out together. If you're new here, my name is Cole Gorham, and I've dedicated my time and life to discovering what it means to be biblically masculine and well-rounded in a world that doesn't teach how to do that. I'm documenting my journey along the way, and if you see or like what you hear and want to engage in the experience, join the conversation below and comment. Okay, let's search for this middle ground. Here's what most men are getting wrong about why they're stuck. They think the problem is that they think too much. So the solution they are chasing is think less, act more, stop analyzing, just go, just act, just move. Let me start with a brief disclaimer. I largely agree that if you want to get anything done in your life, you do need action. Things don't just happen when you sit around on your hands all the time. But this video is primarily aimed at challenging you to do one thing. Think about your outcome, then move. Think about your outcome, then move. That's one phrase. It's not a sequence of steps. There's no breath between the sentence. Think about the outcome, then move. You might be someone with a clear vision, big goals, an ambitious plan. But when it comes time to execute on that plan, you have a very hard time. You see, typically the man who can't move has the best vision. He has the most ambitious goals. The problem isn't his thinking. The problem isn't even his overthinking. The problem is he can't govern his thoughts to become actions. There's nothing that he has done in his life to put authority above his feelings. So he honors his feelings only. For instance, he wakes up in the morning knowing he needs to get something done. Snoozes the alarm, says maybe tomorrow. His feelings are his number one driver, not a purpose above that. He takes a breath, in other words, in between the think about your outcomes, then move. And that breath is too long. But you see, acting impulsively and in a random way doesn't solve this problem either. It actually suppresses the thinking that might have actually caused him to not make a mistake that he was about to make, for instance. Remember what I said earlier, this option does not produce the results either. Because like the man who is stuck in analysis paralysis, these thoughts that he has no underlying principle moving him towards a purpose. Put simply, neither man has a purpose. And without a purpose to govern your actions, you will either freeze in action or crash from action. Both result in no meaningful change. So what's the solution then? Let me give you a principle, and then I want to talk you through exactly where it looks like, where it ended up in my life and how I came to it. Governed action is the third option. That's the so-called middle ground I mentioned earlier. What I mean by governed action is this. A governed man does not wait for motivation to show up before he moves. He doesn't just react to his feelings. He acts in a logical intuition that he has proactively established. In other words, he moves because he's already decided what the next move would be and where that move would end him up. He's executing on something he gave ample proactive thought to already and does not decide in the moment. Think about it like this. Before a building goes up, the architect sits down with a blueprint. He deliberates, he measures, he accounts for everything that could possibly go wrong, whether that's the ground shifting, the weather changing, the cost of materials going up. He does the hard work in advance. That's the proactive piece you're talking about. And that's the key. He proactively doesn't just do the due diligence so that he can talk himself out of it. He's not analyzing with the goal of saying, well, let me see all the cracks so that maybe I don't want to make this structure. But he proactively has the foresight of where he's going. So he's not wondering what day the walls are going up when he should be pouring the concrete footings. Do you get the difference? The middle ground between action first thinking and strategy first thinking is this principle of proactivity. You can proactively plan and you can proactively act. Either way, proactivity requires you to have foresight on where you intend to go. My whole life I've been the brilliant planner. I've had seasons where I could exactly see what needed to happen. I had the foresight, I had the vision, the steps were clear, the to-do lists were made, and I still didn't move. I had a clothing line back in college, and I won a startup competition at the school actually, but I used this funding to create a new season or a new line of my clothing line. One that I wanted to top the first one that we teased as part of the startup competition I was part of. And that second season was so cool in my opinion. I had a large piece of paper in my bedroom and I was drawing up designs, coming up with film concepts, and the whole process was very creative. It was planned beautifully. But sadly, that season never launched, and that season's just floating up in the air somewhere. I refined, I created, I tweaked this idea to absolute perfection in my eyes, just for it to be a rolled up poster stored in a moving box. You see, I lost sight of the why. I got caught up in the random action, and if I could do it again, I would have just launched it and continued tweaking the progress as the seasons rolled out. What I know now though, is that the problem wasn't a planning problem. The problem was that the planning never ended, because I never made a commitment that preceded my feelings of doubt or overthinking. I never said, season 2 needs to come out for X purpose, and I will honor that purpose more than I honor my feelings. When your commitment is to yourself alone, it's as fragile as you are. You can renegotiate a bad morning, a bad feeling. You can extend a timeline as soon as resistance or friction shows up. But when a man makes a decision that is vertical, something that says, I've determined what I'm going to do to a higher purpose, and I will not honor my feelings before I honor this purpose, for instance, his actions, his outcomes, they become dangerous. He becomes a force. Having a purpose higher than yourself keeps feelings from suppressing your actions or your outcomes. I'll say that again. Having a purpose that is higher than yourself keeps feelings from suppressing your action. You don't need to ignore your thinking. You don't need to ignore your feelings. You need to serve a higher purpose that is bigger than yourself and your feelings. Let me explain to you where this has shown up in my life and where I've grown in this area now. When I've made the decision to launch architect programs, I did not have certainty. I had clarity in my purpose. And there's a difference between clarity and certainty. Certainty is what keeps you from taking action when you're overthinking. When you depend on certainty, you can communicate to yourself that unless all things are certain, you will not move. There's no risk taking, there's no leaps of faith when you require certainty. Clarity though, clarity says, I know what I'm supposed to do, and I've determined that it will get done. Clarity is a byproduct of knowing what you want and telling yourself that you will work to get things irregardless of the tension or the friction in your life or the feeling. Because with a sober mind, you have clarity and you know what is best. So I felt clarity that I needed to grow in my life, that I needed to step up in a world to become a better future husband to my soon-to-be wife and a future father to the children I have one day. This clarity was purposeful. I didn't, however, have certainty that my purpose would pay off. I just knew that if I didn't do anything, I would never get anywhere in life. So I just started acting on this purpose, this clarity I have. I started researching, teaching, and practicing disciplines of what it means to pursue masculinity in a world that doesn't even teach it to be a good thing at all. And that's what you're seeing right now, and that's what you'll continue to see. A man who is searching for answers and application and who wants to give you the same thing. These aren't sermons. I'm not telling you this some objective truth that I personally have created myself. This channel is one large documentary, one that shows you who I personally am or how I consistently pursue wholesome biblical masculine purpose. And once I framed architect that way, once it became a matter of obedience to a purpose higher than me, those morning resistance, the emotions that held me back, the overthinking, stopped being the reason I didn't move. It became a test of whether I actually believed what I believed. That is governed action, purposeful action, not impulsion, not the process of eliminating all the overthinking, but prior commitment that held me to a higher standard. The just stop thinking crowd wants you to believe the answer is urgency, that if you can get yourself to move just fast enough, you can outrun the paralysis. But men who act without governance or purpose don't build less chaos, they build faster into chaos. They build bolder mistakes, they course correct louder, and they ultimately end up in the same place, unarchitected, managed by the results of unplanned action. See, I'm not interested in telling you to move. Moving is not the goal. Building is the goal, and builders don't just act, they act according to design. The man who builds a governor or a purpose in his life becomes the man who people look up to, because it is hard to act purposefully in this world. It's hard to be exceptional. It's hard to be uncomfortable and take risks, to be unsafe, but it pays off. Trust me. The man who has purpose and acts in accordance to this purpose and pushes his feelings back to govern himself in a life that you can just receive everything on your lap, this is a man who can lead generations, build wealth, leave behind an unforgettable legacy, and make an impact for the lives around you. That is masculine purpose. True, fulfilling, selfless purpose. So men, here's what I want you to take away from this. The answer to analysis paralysis is not impulsion. It's not reacting. It's not just acting. The answer is prior commitment. So before the next decision you have in front of you, that hard one, the business move, the hard conversation you've been putting off, the discipline that you know you need to have, sit down and do the design work. Do it one time completely and in a moment of clarity, not the moment that the concrete arrives and you need to make a fly decision. Before all that, account for the resistance, account for the feelings of laziness, unworthiness, anything that might hold you back. But then make a commitment to act. Say to yourself, I have decided this is what I'm going to do, and when the feelings of overthinking or resistance come, I won't be deciding right then because I've already decided in this moment. That is not thinking less. That is not thinking more. You're thinking correctly, once, completely, and in advance. If you want a framework for what actually building this looks like, for designing the kind of mental architecture that governs your decisions instead of helping you be governed by them, visit our website at thearchitectprograms.com. Take the free personality assessment, please. It will take you 5 to 10 minutes, and it will literally tell you if you lean more towards action or strategy, and if that's done logically or emotionally. There's no wrong answers, but the things you'll find out about yourself and your mental process are honestly incredibly, and I probably should charge for it. And if you want to book a 15-minute call and talk about it with me for the next 30 days, that is free. Let's talk about your mind. Let's talk about your goals. Men, stop trying to act without thinking. Start thinking before the moment comes, then act. One sentence, one breath. That is the blueprint. That is what we're building together. I'll see you in the next one.